Welcome to episode 1 of Helio Insight. Our guest today is Scott Fisher, data scientist and drummer for the acclaimed band Capstan. Scott shares his insights on how he used data to make business decisions for the band. Enjoy!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 1 of our show. And today we've got a great guest for you. We have Scott Fisher, who is the drummer for the band Capstan. Also, Scott has a extensive quantitative and data analytics background. So we're going to be talking about how he was able to, use some of his skills to make decisions for his band. And what his journey for data science has been. And we'll definitely get a lot of good insights from Scott today and Abdullah, our co-host here. But yeah, so Scott, can you give us a quick introduction of yourself and brief background so people can get introduced to you?
Yeah, I got you. Well, thank you for having me on the show. I do appreciate it. Like Doug said, my name is Scott Fisher. I play drums in a band called Capstan. We've done extensive touring pretty much all over the world over the past about 7 years-ish. And we're signed to a label, and it's a lot of fun. But yeah, as Doug said, I have a degree in physics and a minor in math. And I have brought the world of data to help provide solutions for my band, which is in the music industry, which really you don't have too much of that in that world. So it's been an interesting journey, and it's been very helpful.
Yeah, people think that being in a band, and correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, they think it's just you play music and just go to shows and party all day, but it's actually a business that you have to run. And you have to make decisions about that business, especially where to play and who to play to. So, I think probably a lot of people in the music business don't have that background when they're going in. So that's definitely a interesting perspective that you have that you're bringing to your band. And it's very interesting to hear. I mean, Capstan is obviously a very, very successful band, has a huge following, huge fan base, and they probably don't know that their drummer is actually making some quantitative decisions based on what he's seeing in the data that comes in. So Scott, we wanted to hear a little bit about your journey in data science and data analytics and how you got into it, your interest in data and how you decided that you wanted to apply it to the music business.
Well, actually, let's take it a step back. I'm curious to learn about where your passion for music started and why you ended up studying physics and math in college, and then how you went from a very technical space into the arts, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting dichotomy, certainly. Basically, I grew up, my whole family, they all played music. I was around it all the time. My brother is a successful musician as well. And I just grew up around it. So from a very young age, I knew I'd be playing music in some way. It just so happens that I also love it. So I guess that, is convenient. But basically, I didn't know I wanted to do anything quantitative until I got into college. Like, I didn't know what I was going to do at all. I kind of just went in blind and let's see what I like. And I ended up taking my first physics class. It wasn't even like an engineering physics class. It was like, not even general physics. It was like physical science 1 or something like, and you learn about like super basic stuff. And I was like, oh man, this is super, super interesting. And I was like, all right, let me take the next one. And then a couple years later, I'm in quantum mechanics too. How am I here? How did I get here? So, and yeah, so it's a slow build, and you're just kind of. I think what I think it really boils down to, and I think there are a lot of parallels with music as well, and I think this probably applies to both of you as well. Certainly, Doug. But you have to be so curious to be in in data. And as well, like to be a successful musician, you generally just have to be curious. And I mean, curiosity is so much can be gained from just being curious, just accidental eureka moments, you know? And I feel like that happens a lot in the world of data as well. Those, because, you know, you come in with preconceived notions and bias, and then a lot of times that's all wrong, you know? And I think that so they go hand in hand in a way, if that makes sense.
So are you saying that you also need to be curious in the field of physics, and that's how you're relating it to data? Or
well, right. Well, yes, you do. I mean, every major physics discovery has been because, you know, some guy's just like, I wonder what would happen if I did this, you know, like it's just all accidental craziness, you know? So, yeah, so I just mean that in physics, mathematics, music, data, those are all fields that you benefit greatly from just being curious.
You know, I would argue, and I think you guys would agree, that curiosity is the foundation of success for most career paths out there. That's how you become an innovator in your field, and you stand out from the crowd. So it's interesting that you bring it up as what ties your passions together.
Right.
Is the element of curiosity inside of them.
Yeah, well said. Well said about, like, it's true. Curiosity is you know, you don't have to be the most brute force great at math. You don't have to be the craziest, you know, you just have to be curious. You're going to find something interesting. Who knows? So,
and I do want to ask, did your minor in math have anything to do with influence from Doug?
Well, actually, I mean, I remember because obviously I grew up with Doug, so I remember a long time ago. Before I had even moved off to college, I remember Doug was doing he was solving eigenvalues on the steering wheel in his Daewoo back in the day. He was like he was doing like
dissect that sentence because I don't understand.
Yeah, he was. We were like he was going to his college, and I was still in high school, and we were driving around in his little Daewoo, and he must have been in linear algebra, like the junior level linear algebra class.
Yeah.
And he was doing the 3x3 matrix eigenvalues, you know. And he's like, I'm like, what is that? I don't even understand that. And you know, it really is a funny thing to look back on, because it's a full circle thing, because now so many years later, I'm like talking with Doug about data and quantitative stuff all the time. So it's just interesting.
I will say the linear algebra classes were definitely interesting. They still are to this day. There's still a lot of applications in linear algebra to data science, but very few applications I love solving those types of linear algebra problems, but I think I may have used like eigenvalues once to analyze like a customer database population decay very early on in my career. But yeah, I remember that day. It was my first car. It was actually pretty sturdy. But then it got into a crash, and then that was many years ago though. That was I can't believe you remember that one. But no, I don't think. I think Scott has always had that. That mathematical and mathematical mind. You know, I think it doesn't even come down to sort of what you were saying. I don't even think it comes down to you have to be good in the quantitative aspect of data science or even data analytics. It's the curiosity, as you're saying. And so I agree with you there, Abdullah. And the other part of it is the critical and creative thinking. Those are really the top skills. And people don't want to say this. They're like, oh, top skills in data science, data analytics, and then they list off a whole bunch of recipes. They're like, okay, learn this skill, learn R, learn Python, learn Power BI, learn SQL. And I'm like, that's not what actually makes your top of the tier data scientists or data analytics, or even people that just branch out that are like, your title isn't data analyst for Capstan. You just happen to be using that. It's because you decided to be creative with these approaches. You were thinking critically. You just had that hypothesis that you wanted to test. So it really comes down to, if you want to be successful in this field, like you said, Abdullah, you got to be curious and proactive versus just be like, show me a recipe, show me how to do it. Because that's if you are curious and being imaginative and creative in your approach, that's definitely what sets you apart for being like a top tier professional in analytics. Or even if you don't work in analytics and you're working in business, that's how you make your business more competitive, is by thinking creatively and in looking at those solutions. So yeah, I agree 100%. So a good segue into this, by the way, is we are curious because people are just like people know Capstan, and we want to kind of know, like, well, what decisions are you making in the background which leverages analytics or data, or what type of data that do you have that is available to you? Is it like e-commerce data? Are you looking at data from Spotify, or what are the things that you're doing in the background to make decisions to ensure your band's success?
Right. So there are many sources, and I mean, primarily it does depend. So some of it's curated by us. So like things like attendance counts and tickets sold, things like that, walkouts, stuff like that. That's all compiled by us and our booking team. But then on the other side of that, so outside of just like attendance and how many people do you expect to come to a show or whatever, the other side is what merchandise sells well. Like Doug was saying, we also pull from Spotify. They have a pretty great API for that. But we use like Square. We use Shopify. And all of them, they all have all of those three that I just named have pretty great. I don't want to. I don't. How do you?
It's easy to pull the data, I guess.
And yeah, exactly. It's not super demanding. It's easy to scrape, so you can So it's pretty straightforward. And so mostly those four things: Shopify, which is like our merchandising. Square, which is our merchandising on the road, Spotify, which is obviously listeners and demographics of listeners, and then attendance, so just counts on the road.
I'm curious, how do you collect attendance and walkouts? And can you elaborate on what you mean by walkouts?
Well, so there's a couple things. So like, you can't totally. It's tough to like say walkouts because you're not always headlining. So, and again, there's a lot. It's guesswork. It's not nothing's perfect, right? So, but what I do mean is that we know going into the show how many tickets we've sold, like up until like the day of. We know how many tickets are pre-sold, and then you can get a good idea of how many people will walk up to the show, that they're called walk-ups. So like they're how many people are going to come that haven't bought a ticket in advance, right? And then those numbers kind of scale with each other, if that makes sense. So yeah, you can try to, which those numbers are important for the next time you go to that city. You have some sort of idea of how much merch you're going to need. So it's mostly just trying to forecast how much merch you need to buy from the merchandising company.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah, so you've been using that data that you're getting from Square, Shopify to kind of forecast what, or at least make recommendations about which merchandising to procure, which, by the way, big companies, and Abdullah's worked for some big retailers, and me and myself have also worked with retailers. You have like a team of people doing that, right? And they're probably, their salaries are combined, we're looking at a pretty big budget plus the software that they have to procure to analyze that. And you're kind of just, doing it on your computer, and like, doing it much more lean and more agile than many companies that wasting their time in meetings, and Scott's just like, all right, here we go, and then just gets it to the band, and it's like, this is what we're procuring, this is what's selling well, and what we got to have over here. One other thing that I wanted to ask you is, what is like a big what are some metrics that you are kind of looking at for when you're doing doing these types of analytics? Is it tickets sold? Is it what are some or merch sales, and what's the most meaningful for you?
So right, that's a great question. A number that is pretty much universally used over the world of in the music industry is dollar per head. So like amount of merchandise sold per head per person in attendance.
Like so merch sales per capita or something like that. Or...
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Like yeah. So it's just as essentially average spent per person at the show.
Right.
And that's a good forecaster, but again, it does depend. So because a lot of it's never perfect. Again, like I was saying before, because a lot of it is dependent on the designs as well. So like every tour we go out, we get new designs, and you never know what you might have. I might think that this is going to be great, and most of the time, like I get that pretty much right. Like I'm like, oh, this is what's going to be our best thing. This is going to be second best. So we're going to scale our numbers in heavy in those, and then not as heavy in the others. And most of the time, I'm right. But sometimes I've missed, and then I'm like, ooh, we're stuck with a bunch of stuff that doesn't sell, right? So it can be, it's tricky. But yeah, again, what it really boils down to is dollar per head, and then you're going to try to forecast that with how many people you expect are going to be at your next headlining show.
Yeah,
in that city.
You shouldn't feel bad. I mean, if you're like a one-man team over there, but so many companies, like I said, have whole teams of inventory and merchandising analysts probably trying to make these forecasts, and they'll be off too, right? They're going to be like, hey, we expected this demand for this product, and we got it wrong. I mean, it just, it happens, but if you're right more times than not, then it's not going to cost you that much money.
Exactly.
Funny slogan from our forecasting team today that I think will kind of make what Doug said very digestible. They called it forecasting the art of always getting it wrong.
Yeah.
You're never going to be spot on, and like you said, when you're bringing in a specific design, that's a completely different ballgame.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like you're not selling. If you're just selling like something, you're selling a gray pillow. Well, you can kind of there's no art associated with it. It's just like, yeah. So it's tough, and I mean, yeah, you're totally right with that. There's always going to be some error, even if you get it perfect. It's just there's so many variables that you're never going to get it. But it's just always going to be slightly wrong.
So what's your most popular product that you've sold recently where you didn't expect that demand, and you're like, oh shit, we don't have we didn't accurately forecast this demand, and the demand's higher than we thought.
That was okay on our tour. We were on tour last almost a year ago, so last November into December, and we have these pink hoodies, and I was like, I felt really good about the pink hoodies. I was like, these are really cool. We never done a pink hoodie, so like, let's just see how it goes. Well, we ran out in 3 days, so we're like, now we don't have any hoodies. So then you're like, you're on the phone with the merch company, and you're like, can you drop these in Kansas City like in a week? Because you're all that money, then you're just missing all that money. So like, it's tough, obviously, but it's like, it's a good problem if you're like, oh, well, I'm out of product. Like that's pretty much as good as it could be. But then you're looking at it as like, you're left holding the bag. And, but yeah, it's like Abdullah was saying, is that you're all either way, like
you got it
even
wrong,
if it's even if it's a perfect situation, it's still bad, right? So
So actually, Doug mentioned a very interesting. Doug made a very interesting point earlier, saying we have teams of analysts within the merchandising org, trying to do all the things that you and your band are doing.
Oh,
If you had a team of analysts, right, people that their 9 to 5 is spent analyzing your data, and finding more ways to collect different types of data, and and the assumption is just, I mean, you have all the you need, all the talent that you need. What would you do with your business, with your music business?
oh man, I don't know because then I think it would come down to more. Uh, geez, it's the sky's the limit situation, you know. Um, you could model something to death, you know. You could try to figure it out, and but you know there's infinite possibilities, you know. Like you're talking about, even we've even experimented in the world of, like, you know, geo marketing and stuff like that. And like we're about to run a geo market for our upcoming tour, and it's just you know, if you had unlimited analytics, like you could do so much. I mean, you know, the sky's the limit. How creative can you be? You know, that's the limit of, it's just how creative do you want to be?
Well, why?
So
I mean, can you imagine, like, these problems that you have, other bands are having, and you probably you know, you're going to have some much larger bands, and maybe they'll have you know, bigger budgets. They'll probably have higher revenue streams. I don't even know if because I've never heard of this concept of being, like, you know, analytics applied to music. Honestly, I really honestly think that you're kind of you're doing some, like, pioneering work. There's probably, like, you know, an analytics team at, like, Ticketmaster, for example. But for an actual band, you know, they probably just want to play, and maybe do some of the other operations work. But you know, those types of decisions aren't made using data. But a question is, like, if they're not, they're having the same problems as you, where they have to be able to, what's the best type of merchandise we should be making for our fans? Where should we be playing? How do we kind of grow our user base? If you, to Abdullah's question, if you have these unlimited resources, why wouldn't you turn this music analytics model into a service for, like, other, you know, a service for smaller bands, and you know, show them the system? I think that could be definitely an application there. You would have to sort of formalize your process and your thinking, but I think that could be one way where it turns as, like, a music analytics as a service type thing, and for smaller bands. I just don't know what the market would be for something like that.
It's tough because, you know, there are a lot of small bands, and then there's a lot of small bands that don't make any money. So then, you know, they're reluctant to pay for anything outside of, you know, gas. So it's tough. But I think that there probably is a market for, you know, moderately successful, because, again, I've never heard of like bands I've never heard of musicians doing that. I mean, I didn't even go into it with this goal. It just kind of happened, you know. I was just like, oh, well, let's take a look, you know. So, but yeah, I've never heard of anyone doing it. So you're probably right, Doug. There is probably some sort of market for it.
Yeah. What's the most interesting insight that you found when you were perusing and looking into your data?
This one I found a few years ago, but it was, or maybe not even a few years ago. Maybe it was, or I guess maybe like 2 years ago. But it was after our last headliner tour, I think it was. Like, headliners are really the time you're judging your numbers. You're not touring with underneath someone, so they're all your numbers, right? So I was looking at, like, ticket counts and, like, average per attendant, stuff like that. And it turned out that, like, Ohio was our number 3 state, like, behind, or it was either 3 or 4. Again, it was a few years ago, but number 3 or 4 behind, you know, the top 3, which would be, like, Florida, which is where we're from, California and Texas, and then like Ohio is like, why is Ohio? It was a surprising find considering there are much larger markets outside of just Ohio. So that was surprising. So like a lot of times I like to go to Ohio when we're touring. It just so happens that on this next tour we got coming up, there is no Ohio. It just happens that way,
Yeah, we'll definitely ask you some more questions about where can we find you on the tour circuit in the next few months. But it is interesting that you said that Ohio's number 3 most popular state for you, and I think it's something like number 7 in terms of population. So you're definitely over-indexed in that, meaning that it's higher than the national average. So something is going on in Ohio that's out of the norm.
I don't know what it is, but you're right. It's I can't explain it.
See, this is where your team of analysts would have come in and analyzed the heck out of it and come back with an answer.
Yeah, they would have. Yeah, but it's so hard to be like, what is it? It's tough because at the end of the day, it's also you're talking about art, and it's like it's so hard to even what makes people like art. You know what I mean? It's like, especially we're like a niche band. We don't. So it's strange, but yeah, an analytics team with all the time in the world, they'd be like, oh, we're gonna find it. We're gonna figure it out.
So I want to play a fun little game with the two of you. Are you guys down?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. See what's going on.
Paper, scissors. No, I'm just kidding. So I want each one of us to come up with their most creative application of data science and analytics in Scott's band specifically. Let's just be as creative as we can, as abstract as possible, and go with it. Doug,
Okay.
do you want to go first?
I got one. So I think what you should have is a camera on the stage that uses computer vision to look at the faces inside the stage, that's analyzing the faces and sentiment of everybody, and you're getting like a real time score of, are they bored, are they feeling it, and that might help you with like, hey, what song should I be playing to bring up the energy? Or when they are like bored, you could be like, oh, half off of like beer or something like that, and, like get them in the mood, I guess, just like start getting more energetic, I guess. I don't know. So I don't know. I would say it's a little bit more complex use case for data science for sure. But basically, it's a camera that's always analyzing the sentiment of your audience, and that maybe you can see that score real time because that they can't see it. I don't know if like it's in a prompter and when you're on the stage to just measure the energy. But you guys are professionals. I'm sure you don't really need the computer vision to tell you whether or not your audience is feeling it or not. It might be overkill, but it might be something
it's an interesting idea. I think it is a little bit overkill, but like I'm going to spend 6 months developing a sentiment analyzer.
It could also help you run. It could help you optimize the thrill of your show because you'll be able to know exactly which tracks or which parts of a track aren't as well perceived as others, for instance. And you can go ahead and fine tune that, and then your shows will just be better and better and better.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
But look, you guys are pros, Capstan are pros. But how many live bands have you gone to where like they were not able to read the room and like they were not getting the excitement of everybody? And this goes for like DJs too, where they're just playing track after track that is terrible. Nobody is like feeling the energy in the room. it's just some people. Maybe this is more geared towards maybe not a band like Capstan, but some amateurs or that just don't know how to read the room and be like, what do I got to do to bring the energy level back up? Because people get bored. And you were talking about the walkouts. I'm not sure if I think I understood that as people like walking out of the show. You sort of want to prevent that, because if they're feeling good, they like your music, they might actually they'll tell their friends about it. They'll also maybe buy some merch at the end.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly. Obviously keeping people engaged is at paramount. I mean, at the end, I mean, it's not what it boils down to, but a piece of it is that it's conversion. That's, you know what I mean? So, not that that's not the reason I play music, but like that's a part. It's like a pitch and a sell, it's kind of the same thing. It just happens to be a totally convoluted and probably too complex way of doing it. But yeah, so you're right. Yeah.
Well, back to Abdullah's question. Your question was like, if you had so if you wanted to apply some type of data science solution or analytics solution, what would that be to the music industry? But I mean, you asked me first, and I guess the question goes back to Abdullah and Scott. Like, what would you think?
So, Scott, we can save the best for last. I'll go before you.
Okay.
Well, then I should have gone first.
Yeah.
I mean, I should have gone last. No, I'm just kidding.
But yeah, so something you said a few minutes ago resonated with me, and it's how can you predict art and what people love when it comes to art? It's very difficult to associate that with a specific data point, like a demographic or like I don't know, like age, race, etc., whatever, anything. So where I would apply the analytics and data science is in the space of merchandising, because that you can actually sell. People will buy products. I would probably go out with launching a full-scale brand so that my product is more predictable, and I would try to predict. So I think you mentioned like geo marketing earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I would try to predict what part of the region, or not even, just analyze what styles sell most in specific regions, and if my addressable market, if my fan base, is kind of is a fair sample of that market, if that makes sense.
Yes, I know. Yeah, and you're right. Like, you're totally right that you want some sort of cohesive. And I mean, this is why bands, they go through album cycles and their branding changes every time, and then they have some sort of cohesive thing going on all the time. But again, it's mostly an artistic choice. They're never testing, here are 10 different things, and then they're getting feedback from users. That never happens. It's all just like artistic direction, whatever they want to do, and that can be successful. That can be not successful at all. And so yeah, you're probably right that there is a gaping hole where that part of analytics could help a lot of bands, because I mean, at the end of the day, the merchandising is such a huge part of how you make money in this industry. And if you can smash a brand, you're doing right,
So question, and you don't have to share if this is too personal, but what percentage of your revenue would you say comes from merchandise? Or an average band's revenue comes from merchandise? You don't have to.
We get a decent bit of royalties. But I know a lot of people in our scene aren't like this. They don't get a lot of royalties, and it's not because it just so happens to be because we've self-released music and we just own all of it. So then we just get residuals off of it. So I think ours is slightly lower. The percentage that of our revenue that comes from merchandising is slightly lower than the rest of the industry, and I would say, geez, for some bands, I would be like 95% merchandise. Well, it's
What?
tough. It's tough. It depends. It really does depend. Because I forgot, like, you get guarantees for playing shows too, so it does depend. But outside of music, I mean, money that comes from music or money that comes from everything else that's attached to the music, which is like merchandising, show guarantees from shows, all that kind of stuff. I would say that's the vast majority. So I mean, yeah, like if you combine guarantees and merchandising, 95%.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So we need to open up a Shopify type company focused purely on artists, small scale and medium scale artists, such that it's a one-stop shop to go in and buy your artist's favorite merchandise, and we'll have the company run all their algorithms and analyses. There you go. That's your business.
That it's a good idea. It's a good idea because I know that there are there are companies that they mostly like shirt printing companies. They open their they say they print for a bunch of bands, then they have their own store and they host all of it. So like the artist never gets their merch. Yeah. So as I was saying, there are merch companies that they print for a bunch of bands, and then what they do is that they never actually send the merch. They never send the merch to the band. They hold on to it and they sell it on their online store. And to my knowledge, no one is ever doing analytics. I think they're just like, oh, well, we're running low on mediums, so I guess we got to print more. It's never like...
It's all just in time. Yeah.
Right, yeah. It's never... I've never heard of anyone doing that, so I don't think it's happening.
All right, so Scott's turn. Back to you, Abdullah, your question to Scott. What would you say?
So, I'm just coming up with this right on the spot. Because
Think about it if you need.
no, it's okay. I thought about it right when you brought it up, and I was like, I wonder if that would work. I don't know if it would, but let's see. So, every band is different. Every musical artist is different. Their audience likes different parts of them. They don't even my understanding as an artist of what I like to write isn't what people listen to my band for. It takes people a lot of years to realize that whatever you envision for yourself may not be what everyone likes you for. That doesn't mean you necessarily have to do only what people like, but it means that you have to at least respect the idea that what your idea of what your music isn't necessarily what everyone likes, if that makes sense. So my idea for like a machine learning application would be to analyze your entire discography and look at plays over time. And I don't know if I'm sure that this exists, because I know that there's there are libraries to examine video, and so I wonder if there are, if there are algorithms that listen to songs, and then they take similarities in music or in similarities in sounds, and if you can train the model on what it sounds like to what the output of the listeners are, or in streaming, then you can try to understand what people like about your band.
Yeah, that's where your physics background can come in too. You have to kind of know the how to decompose like sound files and understand like what are each one of the each measurement that you should be using to analyze that. That's definitely an interesting problem.
They have now, I don't know if you've seen it, or it's pretty relatively new, but they have software now that can strip tracks into individual instruments. I don't know how it works, no idea, but like you can break something off into drums, break it off into the guitars, break it into bass, break it into vocals, and that's how I would imagine you'd have to do it. So you can see like, oh well, this thing, say like, oh, your most correlated thing to streams is a this vocal style or something, you know. But yeah, I don't know if it's ever possible. I don't think it would ever be a thing, but it's an interesting thought.
Scott, we really appreciate you coming in today. And those are very interesting things that I've heard that I'm just like learning right now. And we could have tons of discussions, follow-up discussions related to that one. We might want to get you back on the show after you wrap up your tour, which, by the way, you're going to be going on tour, or Capstan's going to be going on tour. Can you give us a little bit of details about that?
Yeah. We're so Capstan, we're going on tour. I think the first day is October 18th, and then we're going, or not October, November. Sorry, my brain is falling apart.
Well, it's physics, so he's probably thinking like time travel.
Yeah, it's a time travel thing. We just gotta go fly around the black hole for a little bit, and we'll fly back. Yeah. No. So yeah, November 18th to December 17th. Pretty much a full U.S. other than the Pacific Northwest. You can find us on every streaming platform, every social platform, Capstan Band. So if you want to come check out a show, check that out. And we're also doing VIP, and it'll be a lot of fun. So
sweet. Yeah, I'm going to have to get some. You have any VIP and access in Tampa, in your show in Tampa, Orlando?
Yeah, but don't do that, Doug. That'd be so weird. Just because it's like it's gonna be it's like an intimate acoustic thing, and then I'm gonna be playing guitar, and I'm gonna look at Doug, and he's gonna make me laugh. I'm gonna mess up.
All right, well, we'll see. Maybe I might use a pseudonym, and you're gonna have to build a machine learning algorithm to detect whether or not that's like me in there, because I'm gonna use like a fake name, fake email. I'll be like, hey, this is Doug who signed up for VIP access. But no, really cool. I mean, we'll looking forward to. I'm definitely going to attend one of the shows.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
And hopefully we can have you back on after your tour. So good luck.
Yeah, it would be a lot of fun. And thank you guys so much for having me. It was a blast. Loved it.
Oh, for any merch, what's a good place for that? You've been talking about this sweet merch that people are like, you're using analytics to optimize for.
Oh yeah, I got banging merch coming here. But no, it's well, you can go to capstanband.com, and there's like a merch link there, and you can see all of it in its glory. But we're gonna have we got a new line coming for this next tour, so it's gonna be really sick.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Thank you very much, Scott, for coming in today. Again, appreciate it, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Cheers, guys.
All right, see you.